And from a personal perspective, in terms of when you look at your own relationships, how has trying to express oneself as a human being, in spite of all of those external influences that would tell you to be this particular way, how does that play out in a relationship between two people? Do you believe that own internal conflict is then expressed as toxic masculinity, or like how do you see that playing out?
That a little story before the
Okay, sure.
answer. When I was really young, and this I have sisters. I grew up in a family full of women, so they used to dress up as women do.
Yeah.
So when we would go buy clothes, I would think, oh, I want that. I want a dress as well. I want this. So at some point, some of the things they could buy me. The knickerbocker,
Yeah.
all of those things. So they could buy me things that were feminine, but not a dress. They couldn't buy me that. But I used to dress up like my sisters because I wanted to look like them. Because they
Yeah.
were my sisters. They were people I looked up to. So when I went to varsity, that's when I decided that, okay, I'm going to explore my sexuality and I'm going to start dating. A lot of it, and now I started seeing that people are uncomfortable. And I wasn't dressing up by then. I wasn't dressing like a woman. Then at some point you kind of stop because the world tells you to stop. I think in high school that kind of faded away. But my first relationship, I remember my then partner used to
Yeah.
say, why don't you go to the gym? Why don't you do this? Why how? And
Small suggestive things.
yes,
Yeah.
and I thought, oh no, he wants me to be a little healthier. Because I grew up a bit chubby, but anyway,
Yeah.
I lost the weight, and I thought, okay, maybe he wants me to build a body. But then now, looking back, I realized that, oh, he was trying to push this idea a little. So, but I could not tell back then. But I knew that we kind of had issues with how expressive I would be in the relationship, and in a lot of relationships I've been with, even sometimes in friendships where, if I would see something, I get really scared easily, so I would scream, and then people think did that voice just come out of you? So little things like that, where you think, oh, okay, I cannot scream like that, or I cannot be that expressive. I cannot say that. I cannot. The world kind of, little by little, chips away at all the little nuances that are in who you are and how you express yourself. So a lot of things have fallen away as I've grown up. Like I said, I used to love, and at some point I thought maybe I'll just end up as a woman, but the world tells you that you cannot end up as a woman, and I wasn't at that time. It was just because I grew up a lot around
Yeah.
a lot of women. I love being a man, and
Yeah.
that even now I understand that. But back then, where I used to see that women get to dress up so nicely and they get all these fashionable things, I want to get into that. I want to wear nice clothes. I want to do all those things. But at some point, you kind of say, oh, I cannot wear bright colors. If I wear pink, it's a problem. Flowers is a problem. Those type of things, that you kind of stop at some point. And then how you talk, how you express yourself, kind of, they tone it down, speak this way. So you kind of build a facade of, this is who I should be, even in relationships. And that kind of grew with me, that, okay, now I have to be a little bit more held back. I have to speak in a certain way, so that I get the respect that I need. Now, I think we were talking earlier about growing in our careers, and now having a team and all of that. Walking into a room and knowing that you have to command respect, there's certain things you expect, because there's men in there, there's women. They expect their leader to act a certain way. So if I come in and I'm all colorful and all of those, that for them is not a sign of respect. They don't want to respect that. for whatever reason. So I have to be a certain way for them to be able to respect me.
It touches on, I mean, you've done in the corporate space quite a lot of work in, LGBTQI plus forums and stuff. What is your take about, and to put it bluntly, corporates in general, because I think they would like to model themselves as upstanding, responsible citizens, really model all these, put these values up and all of that kind of stuff. So in this work that you've done in that corporate space, do you believe that from a corporate South Africa perspective, there truly is a willingness and open-mindedness to understand, accept and embrace a masculinity that's different to the heteronormative masculinity?
I think, I'm in a place of privilege because I'm in Gauteng, I'm in Sandton, and if I answer that question, it will be really unfair because I walk into spaces and they have to listen to what I say. They have to, because now you are in a place where you are of privilege. So they've seen your face, they've heard about you. You walk into a Shell, you walk into an ABSA, and they have had leaders who are gay. So they are a bit more inclined to listen to the conversation. But I could not say the same thing for somebody in KZN who walks into a corporate space and they're not as willing, because it's not just about policies, it's about the culture of the office, the people who are in there. So in a place like KZN or a Limpopo, where you walk into a government office or you walk into a corporate space where they are not used to that and they might not be as accepting. Here, I walk into a lot of spaces and I'm embraced, and it's happiness. It's not everybody. I won't say it's 100%, but 70% of the time you are seen as a leader, and somewhere they have to accept that this person is in a place of power, so they do not have a choice, and they can influence the narrative a lot. So you walk into spaces and they are more welcoming and they are more embracing of you. But I know that it's not true of all of South Africa. So I will say that there is certain spaces, especially in Gauteng, where a lot of people have come out and said, I'm gay and I'm proud and all of those things. We have, I think, a lot of corporates joining the round table that we did, a lot of corporates saying that, oh, okay, we have a lot of leaders. How do we make it more safe? How do we make it more inclusive? How do we make... Because inclusiveness is becoming a big word in corporate, whether it's just in terms of... because they have to play... sometimes corporates just say things but they don't really practice them. Yeah. So, but there has been a lot of change in this space where I am. But I know that it's not like that for everyone.
Yeah.
And that, I think there's still a lot that needs to change. Gauteng is...
It's like an outlier, right?
Yes. It's still it's a big place, and we are really privileged, but to be honest, we still have a lot of work to do in the rest of South Africa.
Okay, so in your journey, do you find that a lot of the resistance that you found was from quote unquote straight men, and why do you think that is? Why is heteronormative masculinity seemingly so touched in their studio by a different kind of masculinity?
To be honest, I have a couple of straight friends, but I think the biggest resistance, and it still is from gay men, from my side.
Wow.
Because I think because a lot of it is built on fear. We go to gay clubs, we know the gay community. Because I'm gay, I'll spend some time with them. And in a gay club, you find everybody's happy. everybody's happy to see you, everybody's happy to interact and all of those things, and you see many of them. And then you have an event about inclusiveness, and you invite a lot of people. Almost, I promise you, 90% don't show up, because I think still there is a lot of fear around the idea that I'll be exposed and treated badly if people know about my sexuality. There'll be issues around that.
Sure.
And a lot of it is still fear of how society will react. But a lot of resistance comes from the gay community, within the gay community. So, yes. But again, in general society, yes, because we like to assume that straight men form the majority of, well, are bigger than the number of gay people we have. Obviously, when resistance comes, it mostly comes from them because of the numbers they have. And the one or two that, you know, I always say I speak from a place of privilege, because I am in a place where even when somebody doesn't necessarily like you, they're forced to tolerate you. And there is a level of tolerance I receive from a lot of people because of I walk into a space and maybe I'm your leader, or you know of something, then you do not want to necessarily make me feel uncomfortable, even if you don't agree with what I'm doing. And one or two will say, I'm not really a fan of this, or I'm not really comfortable or accepting of this. But gay people wouldn't even say that. They will just not show up, not even voice out how they feel about the whole thing. Masculinity in itself has always been the idea of that men, because of the actions they've done, everything has been placed on them. But I think there is a lot of contributions from whether it's women as well, who make gay people feel uncomfortable because of how they believe gay people should behave. Because apart from anything, I know a lot of my friends who say, my mother cut me off because she found out that I was gay, sleeping with men, or she saw that I was gay and then said, you cannot be that because of my religious beliefs, because of our culture, it doesn't accept of you. And sometimes there is men who say, well, I'm embracing and I'll change my mind. But I think there is a lot of contribution to this whole narrative, more than just men.
Okay.
And that's one thing that we hardly touch on.
Would you like to be a father one day?
If I said no, I think I already played that role, but no, no.
In the context in which you play it, my question would then be, what would you then teach or try and instill in the generation that follows, based on your own experience on this topic of masculinity, whether it's a niece or a nephew, or like I said, in whichever context you're being a father?
I think the biggest thing, and for me it shows up, I think compassion and love. I think that's the one thing that men have lacked in their lives, because a lot of people don't really show compassion to the burdens that a lot of men go through. I'm not saying that I'm not in defense of what men have done throughout history, but I think part of it is because most of them hardly ever felt like they were loved, and loved properly, where you are told that you can be yourself, whether yourself is a colorful, hip person. Because that men, one thing they don't get to do is be expressive of who they are. They are not allowed to be. If you are a man who is colorful and happy and all of those things, who doesn't speak in a demeaning way, in a strong way, who's feminine and happy and all of that, you are not allowed to be. So you are told to be in a certain way. So if somebody were to say that I love you even if you are feminine and expressive and happy, you learn to grow up and be who you are and just be in the world. So I think loving our kids and telling them to have more compassion for other people, that for me, when you see a child being bullied or being the bully, you think you're probably going through so much, and I should probably want to hear what your story is, why you would want to behave like this. So love and compassion, I think that's the big things that I want to teach my kids, and just loving themselves as well, no matter how you come into the world.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, for your pearls of wisdom. Given a lot of things, I think, for everyone to think about, and helped us carry this conversation forward. And for those who are watching, if it's made you uncomfortable in any way, that's the whole point. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.